Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar on holistic assessment. And this is the third webinar in the series of webinars. And in the previous ones, we discussed the goals and objectives for learning, how they are defined, as well as the strategies to define the learning objectives and integrate it with competencies in learning plans. And even learning for assessment was also discussed in the previous webinars. In today's webinar, Deepthi ma'am is going to discuss about assessment strategies like self-assessment, peer assessment, group assessment, and the like. I would like to remind our participants once again that the assessment link will open on 1st November 2021 at 5 p.m., which is after the last webinar, because we are getting continuous inquiries when the assessment will open. So once again, I would like to inform you that it is going to open on 1st November at 5 p.m. and participants are advised to fill the assessment form with utmost care because it can be submitted only once. So, with these words, I once again welcome you all and I invite Puchika ma'am to carry it forward from here. Puchika ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CBSE Holistic Assessment webinar. This is the third webinar, which is about assessment strategies. And we all know Ms. Deepthi Sani. She's a thought leader in technology integration and strategy. She completed her Certificate of Educational Studies from the College of Teachers, Institute of Education, London, UK, and has trained in teaching languages through technology from Trinity College, UK, and has been a teacher educator for technology integration for the last 20 years. Ms. Deepthi Sani is also the Chief Executive Officer of Mahatattva. Thank you, everyone, and ma'am, over to you.
Good afternoon and namaskar, everyone. It's nice to see you again. And a lot of you have been, pouring in a lot of praises, a lot of responses, a lot of questions, and we have tried our best to answer those. But I'm sure if you have any specific query, if you can go on to the CBSE channel, the webinars are recorded and they're posted there. So if you have any questions regarding the webinar that we have held already, the first two webinars, please go on to the CBSE website and see them. They are there and they are recorded. And the assessment piece, which will come alive on the 1st of November, is based totally on the 4 webinars that we have been doing with you, and you have been regularly, religiously attending them. I would suggest that if you have time, if you can go through these webinar once more before you actually do the assessments, it will be beneficial. All the questions, the multiple choice questions, there are only multiple choice questions and they are self-grading. You will be able to see that every question put in there is very comfortably understood and answered by you if you make notes and you listen to these webinars carefully. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and the presentation for today. Today is webinar 3, and we are looking at assessment strategies. So if you look at the previous 2 webinars, if you just think about them, I'm just doing a prior knowledge check. We are talking about just assessment strategies today, and specifically on self, peer, and constructive feedback. The idea is that in webinar 1, we spoke about defining the goals for learning. The stress was on learning because, yes, assessment is a part of learning. It's the engine which drives the learning, but we had to understand what is the flow and where does assessment fit in. So that was the first webinar where we did the entire learning process, and we spoke about keeping the learning in mind. The second webinar was actually about planning the learning, the assessment for learning. And a lot of stress was given again on how do we plan? How do we get the rubrics? What are the criteria? So all of that was, discussed at length. So today, in series of that holistic assessment that we are talking about, we are going to look at how to use self-assessment for critical analysis of students' own efforts. So this is about becoming not only autonomous learners, but also self-regulated learners. How do we get the children to become self-regulated? Then we are going to talk about how do we give the children peer assessment opportunities in an authentic classroom, and how do we assure that when we talk about self-assessment, when we talk about peer assessment, how does group assessment also fit in? So once you get them to self-analyze their own work and you get them to work with peers, you will see that the culture in your classroom will actually move towards that status where giving feedback to each other, taking feedback becomes very, very effortless. So we will talk about constructive feedback and how do we integrate constructive feedback into the assessment process so that it is not only about the child learning about his or her own learning, it's about getting multiple perspectives from their peers as well. So you all must have seen in the classroom that when the children are doing their work, you realize that once they see a peer's work, they realize, oh, this is something that we could have done in a particular way. And the learning, as we are talking about, becomes much deeper. So as we all know, that when we talk about assessment, broadly, they are divided into three facets. So there is assessment for learning, which is your formative assessment. We talk about real-time assessment, diagnostic, feed-forward assessment. Here, the information that the teacher gathers is to understand the children's knowledge, where they are with their understanding and skills. And in this assessment process, we provide feedback to the children so that they can, at that point in time, they can revise, they can rework their assessment or their assignment or their project, and they can improve. Now, assessment as learning is what we will be stressing on today, because this involves self-assessment, this involves peer assessment, and this also involves constructive feedback. So we will talk about formative, but that is something we all know so well. We will stress towards the end as assessment as learning, because that is something which will make the entire learning process student-led, and it leads to metacognition and self-awareness, self-regulation. So this is what we are going to talk about majorly today. And of course, there is assessment of learning, that is your summative, wherein you have your question papers, you have performances, you have role plays, you have children doing various skits, drama, they're creating poetry. So all of that comes under your summative assessment. So when we talk about formative assessment, we can say that this is something which is an ongoing process. So I have put in a lot of text here, but this is just for your notes so that when you're reading through, you have a better understanding. And also, Mahatattva believes a whole lot on research. So a lot of research went through before we prepared these webinars for you. So I wanted to quote the sources from where all this has been taken so that it can be authenticated. And I know that there are people here listening and watching the webinar who are very experienced themselves. So just to let you know that this is something that I'm not talking about just off the hat. It is something which is very, very research based. So when you talk about formative assessment, it is, just as a flash in your mind, it should be that it is something which is ongoing. It is for improvement. It is something which is, coming back into the system given as a constructive feedback to the children, and before the end product is submitted to the teacher, the children have various iterations. They look at their work and they improve before they go ahead. So we are looking at ongoing continuous assessment, and it is basically, when we say formative, it is to provide feedback and correctives at each stage in the teaching learning process. So it is something which feeds into the entire process. Please understand that process here is a very important and a key word to understand, that formative assessment works on the process and not the end product. So when we look at formative assessments, we look at the data that you collect. It might be a small activity that you've done. So you collect that data from the children, their children's work, and then you analyze the data. After you've analyzed it, you look at what are the various gaps, what are the interventions, what are the extensions that are required for this task to become better. You plan that. You introduce that to the children in the learning process, and then you implement the plan of action. And you will again, at some point in time, do a check for learning, wherein you understand where the child is at that point in time. Now, formative assessment can be done by the teacher, or they can be, like we discussed the rubrics in the last webinar. You can have rubrics attached to the work that the children are doing, and they can assess themselves as well. But the idea is that the formative assessment is a continuous process, and it has various iterations in between before you reach the final product. And also, when you talk about formative assessment, it is about the process. So if you look at very quickly some activities that you can do in the classroom, there are round robin charts. We discussed them in webinars before, wherein the children start with the idea and the charts go around the classroom. You can do a quick 60-second strategy where you can get the children to turn and face their partners and do a quick interview as to what the understanding is at that point in time. Many of you must be using the exit and the admit slips. So exit slip is for what have you learned today. Admit tickets are for your prior knowledge check. You can also do this fantastic strategy, which is called the 3-way summaries, where you have done something for the day, and it can be maths, English, science, Hindi, whatever. You do a summary for what was done today in 10 to 15 words, and then you elaborate it to 30 to 50 words, and then you go on to 75 to 100 words. So what are the 3-way summaries that can be done? I'm sure you can very quickly think of various areas in your subject domain where you can fit this. Then there are also 1-minute papers, and this can be used as an exit slip when the session, the day is done. You can get the children to write the main point of today's the lesson today. You can get them to write the most surprising concept for them. What are the questions in their mind that have still not been answered? And what was the most confusing area of this topic? So once you get them to do this, this can be your planning sheet for the next day. So once you have gone through, you will see there is a particular point that the children have found confusing. So the next day, that's where you start. So that is something that you can try. And of course, there is stop and go. And this is something which is very interesting, wherein you can read or you can teach the children some concept which you have split into maybe 4 parts in the entire lesson. So today's session is for maybe 40 minutes. So we use 30 minutes to do this, where you do something with them and you stop and you let the children reflect on what has been learned so far. Then you teach them a concept, and then you let them reflect on it. So that is one. Sketchnoting is something a whole lot of us are using now in the online space, where the understanding of the children is being, reflected in a quick sketch note with the doodling and with text as to what have they learned in the lesson today. The 3, 2, 1 countdown is also something which can be very effectively used as a formative assessment, where you can ask them to do 3 ideas or concept that they learned today, the 2 ideas that surprise them, and 1 thing that they intend to start doing based on what they have learned. So this is something which will also give you the at that point in time where the child is, and you can then make differentiated sort of lesson plans for these children. There is the metacognition sheet, which can be readily available in the online classroom, or it can be available as a slip in the class, wherein you can always have this ready, and the children who finish early can get you to write how can you summarize the topic for today, how can you apply the topic, and what questions do you still have about the topic. So as the children finish the task for the day, they could be answering these 3 questions, or you can just choose one question, what questions do you still have. So you will be able to have a formative assessment of where the children are with their learning at that point in time again. So there are some activities that you can do as dipsticks. This is to understand again where the children are. So you can get them to write a letter to a friend explaining the concept that they've done today, draw a sketch of what they've done. So this is your sketch noting. You can also get them to do a think, pair, share, and write down what they are reflecting on. And those sheets can give you a very clear formative assessment of the activity that you've done. So when you are using technology, a whole lot of you must be using this as well. Edpuzzle is, you make a video and you get the children to see that video. Edpuzzle account for the teachers gives you exactly how much video, how much time has the child seen the video for. You can integrate questions into Edpuzzle, and you can test their knowledge as they are watching the video. Like in most of the video players, there is no way of checking how the children are actually seeing the video and are they understanding or not understanding. So in Edpuzzle, you can get the children to reflect on, write the questions before they move ahead. And in the Edpuzzle classroom, if you have 35 children, you can see exactly how much have the children learned and how much have they answered and have they viewed the video or not. So that can be done very easily. In Flipgrid, the children, you can create a classroom again, and the children can go on to Flipgrid and create their own experiences for the teacher to see. Now here, I want to point out one thing, when we go online, we do a whole lot of stuff wherein we are gathering a lot of data. Like here, if you get the children to do 30 seconds or 60 seconds video, you understand that there will be a lot of data that you have to see eventually. So be very careful when you plan such assessments for the children. There you can have some sort of a self-assessment or peer assessment attached to it, so that it becomes an easier task for the teacher, and she doesn't get inundated with too many data points to check before she can come to a decision. Formative assessments are to see where the gap areas are, and it should be a quick check for you as well, and not something which you are doing manually and you get so disheartened doing it that you say, okay, I'm not trying this again, and I can just keep going on and I don't want to do this again. So it should be a good experience for you as well. So you have to put a lot of thought as to what is the learning objective of this activity that I'm doing, and eventually what do I want from it. So technology has made it very easy for us to collect data points, various data points, where we can go in and we can collect a whole lot of data. But managing that data is something that the teachers have to look at. So you can have loads of pictures and loads of videos and evidences uploaded onto a common drive or a common folder like the Google Drive or the OneDrive. But what do you do with that data and how will it help you in the formative assessment or the summative assessment is something that you need to think before you design the activity. So be very careful as to what you're designing. So this was about the formative. And when you go on to the summative assessment, so you have your own worksheets, you have your exam papers where everything is with the rubric, there are marks and the children understand. But you can also try some infographic or a collage for the children to understand what they have learned, and try and create an aesthetic piece which will get them to not only inculcate the skills, tech skills which are required, but also will give them a perspective of the aesthetics. How do I make this look pleasing? How do I make this look beautiful? You can also do, for summative assessments, you can also have the children rehearse a skit, or you do a podcast, you can do a diorama, you can get the children to do, how do you explain this entire session that we have done using 10 flashcards. So decision making, taking out the content, looking at what to use, what not to use, to make your presentation crisp, aesthetic, understandable by the people you are showing it to. So all those skills get integrated to a small activity where they are creating their flashcards. And of course, you have presentations which the children can make, and that can be done beautifully by apps like Prezi. You can record your podcast on Vocaroo, which is online, and it's very easy for the children to manipulate that. Canva, of course, has become so popular now during the online learning that almost every teacher I talk to is using Canva. So the children also love using it. I think the collage and the infographic, the presentations, creating websites and all becomes very easy with Canva. So these are some examples for formative and summative assessments. Before we go on to assessment as learning, I just wanted to talk to you about this as well. So whatever we know, whatever we do regularly in our classroom is part of what we need to understand about in holistic assessments, but we can keep them slightly away for the moment because this is something all of us do regularly. So you can also do screen recording, wherein the summatives, whatever the child has understood about the lesson or wants to give a presentation based on what he has learned, can be recorded in Loom. So when do we do this? Why do we do it? And how do we do it? The formative and the summative. So formative, of course, it helps the student to learn and practice what the child is doing at that point in time. And if you look at the bottom, it assesses the process. It's not too worried about the product, right? When is it done? It is done throughout the course. So it is various iterations. It identifies the gaps to improve the learning. And it is via approaches that support the specific student needs. That is how, you have the differentiated learning, because formative is, and if you put self-regulation and self-reflection or student reflection in that, that makes it specific to that child's need, not the whole class. Whereas if you look at summative, it is at the end of the instructional period. You collect evidences for the student's knowledge, skill, or proficiency. What has he learned? What is the skill set that we have achieved? This is important as well. I'm not saying summative is not important, but it has its own value. And it is done towards the end, mostly, where you assess the product which the child has created. So some of the examples for formative, we have discussed some of them before. I've given you some tech tools which you can use and some activities which you can do. So formative can be in class discussions, which are done very quickly in the classroom. There can be clicker questions, you have Kahoot, or you have the Google Forms. You can do low stakes group work where you get the children to think, pair, share, or you get them to do a round robin chart or something like that. Weekly quizzes, 1 minute reflections, homework assignments, and surveys. These are something which the survey especially will let you understand where the children are with their learning. The summatives, of course, are exams. They are standardized tests. They are final projects, essays, presentation reports, and the final grades. So those are your big picture towards the end, assessing your uh, product. So if you really look at this little image, which I really think tells us about the nuances of what actually formative and summative is. So if you have the chef tasting the cook while it is being cooked, is formative, because you are in the process. And if there's less salt, or there's something ingredient that is needed, it can be put at that point in time. But when the guests have the soup, that is summative. So nothing can be done about it. Only a feedback can be given, where the guest says that the soup is not tasting too well, or the soup is lovely. So this is something which is towards the end, and it rates the product. And when the cook is being cooked and can be salvaged if it is not tasting too well, that's when the formative happens. I think if you keep this picture in your mind by Paul Black, this is something which will never let you forget what summative and what formative means. So keeping the formative and the summative now in one shelf, we will move on to self and peer assessment, because this is something which we find because of various reasons. There are lots of children in our classroom. That is one of the things that the teachers say, we can't do it because there are so many children and we can just do one kind of thing. But I would suggest that you should work towards this culture of the children doing their own assessment, reflecting on their own work, identifying their own improvements, and looking at the various feedback that they have got from the teacher, from the peers, and try and make their own work better before it is finally submitted to the teacher to say, this is my final work. So self-assessment requires a lot of self-regulation. And of course, it is going to be difficult in the beginning. But once the the stage is set, it becomes very easy. And the children themselves start analyzing their work, reflecting on their work. And it is not only for the classroom, in class 3, in class 4, in class 5, or in class 12, but like we said and we discussed before, this is something for life. So your own self-analysis of what you have done, whether it is, laying down the dining table, is it aesthetic? Is it looking nice? Or have I taken the correct business decision? Or have I made the best strategy or the business plan? Having your own self as an assessor makes it all the more tougher. Let me tell you, most of us are very tough on our own selves, and we will drive us towards perfection. So this is something which we should work towards, and I will give you the entire background today as to how this can be done and why it is done and how it needs to be done. Peer assessment, of course, like we said right at the beginning, we will be looking at how can we assess our own work and our peers' work, looking at constructive feedback. Because if we are talking about peer assessment, it is very important for us to make our children understand that if you are looking at your peers' work, how do you get your your facts or your comments or your feedback through to your peers? Because not everybody will take criticism nicely. So it has to be built into the classroom culture. So when we do the peer and the student self-assessment, it actually gets the children responsible for their own learning. There is more engagement because there is more ownership, because the children understand that this is something that we self-corrected ourselves on, or this is what feedback I gave to my peer, and that sort of ownership comes into the children's minds. So we will take the student self-assessment first, and then we will talk about peer assessment. So what are the benefits? Why should we be doing this? So please, I'm not going to read all of this, but we have to understand This again is for your notes. We have to understand that for the longest time ever, we have been talking about the metacognition skills. How do we get the children to develop these? So self-reflection, self-assessment is something which will get them to do it. When they evaluate their own performance, they actually are imbibing it for life, just not in that little instance where you get them to self-assess. So doing a rubric just once in the whole year is not going to help. You're going to have to inbuilt it into the system. So getting the children to have an intrinsic motivation, how do I become self-aware, how do I make things, so there are some children who will not complete their homework, and that if the teacher says, okay, you have to do self reflection on your work and you have to self assess your work, I'm not going to check yours, I will check it only finally when the entire task is done, but this bit you have to do your self assessment. I have seen myself that that actually gets the children to complete it, because it needs to be self assessed. So how do you get them to develop this intrinsic feeling of completing and doing a good piece of work? Critically reviewing your work also gets you to understand that yes, this is a task which is my responsibility. I will be able to make this better if I look at it better, if I am self critical and I can make this a better piece than it already is. So constructive feedback from your peers, giving them constructive feedback, will also get you to understand that you can review work. It is not that, I have written one poem and it's done and I've handed it over to the teacher and it's gone. No, once you've written the poem, you have a rubric. You check, do I have a heading? Is the other words rhyming or not rhyming? Is there a main theme? What am I looking at? So all of that is ticked across, and then you hand it over to the peer who also looks at it. When you read somebody else's poem, you also get certain ideas, and you look at a different perspective of the same assignment. And then when you get your work back with constructive feedback, you can make your piece better. I think this also makes you have an ownership of your own work, and thus you generate a whole lot of student agency, that is the student choice and the student voice, and they become more like a, they take ownership of their own reading. But of course, when you do self assessment, there are going to be challenges as well. Now, if you have children who are not cognitively so not performing so well, you might have them saying that, I can't do it, this is something that I will not be able to self assess, I cannot do this. And I will most of the people think, okay, you get the books to change hands, and I will write the sum or the question or the answer on the board, and everybody, you please take your partner's book and you do it. So that is not the aim of self assessment, that is not a time saving exercise for the teacher. It's the culture that you're building in the class. So you have to be very careful that the children who are not performing too well, whose self esteem is not too spiked up at that point in time, might not want to do it. So you have to gradually build it, start small and build it over time. So you also might think that the children who are doing the self assessment, they might perceive it that, I don't want to do it, the teacher has to look at it and I'm not going to look at it because I'm as it is low on confidence to do this. So you might find those kind of challenges as well. Also, when you do self assessment, it might not be so especially if it is numeric, you will see that you will not find consistency. So in most cases, don't do a numeric self reflection unless you have a very clear rubric with the criteria and the description set to it. Unless and until they know that exactly why am I giving a 5-pointer to this point, because the descriptor in the rubric says this. So unless and until that is there, otherwise it can be just rubric. A feedback can be just written words or some suggestions, and I will be giving you strategies for that as well. So when we do self assessment, we are actually getting them to become active participants in their own learning, and we are looking at the process and the product. So we are looking at the process and the product rather than but when we do self assessment, the children actually learn to reflect on their work. They critically maps. So these are the good things which happen when you start doing self assessment in your classroom. They also understand how they have to improve, because when you do a very clever exchange of papers between a person who's child who's not doing too well, and you give him to peer evaluate a paper which is done reasonably well, they can see where what targets that they need to set for themselves. Or you can also have model papers which are reflected on the screen after the task is done, and let them look at the standard of work which is the expectation of that particular task, so they can compare to that. They also learn how to work independently, how to think independently and critically. So these are the good things that happen when you start doing self-assessment in the classrooms. And I think this should be reason enough for you to get on with self-assessment. So when we talk about self-assessment, how can we make it happen? What are the little small things that we need to keep in mind? So first of all, defined as the criteria that should be very clear for the children. So they are going to assess, all right, but don't let them do it in air. It has to be something which is very well defined for them. You can say these are the learning objectives that we want to cover, these are the topics, these are the resources, let's start our research, and in maybe 2 periods time we will do a formative to understand how much have you learned, and we will do a self evaluation, and this is the rubric that you will set yourself to mark against. So children should know what are the goals that you are setting for them. This will help them get clarity. Then, like I said, providing them examples is a good idea, but this should be done at a certain point when the children have moved along creating their own. Because I feel that sometimes providing them with examples is not a good idea. It just gets them to copy what is being shown. So uh, do this at a later point in time, but it's a good thing to show them some examples, and you could also show them from what the children are doing in the classroom. So providing examples is a very good idea. Like I said, the with looking at the project which is coming along, or it could be just an essay that they're writing, or a research paper they're writing, or they're creating a diorama, or they're creating a prototype or a 3D model. So it's understandable that the children will have a set idea as to what they are creating, especially if you're using a design thinking cycle in your classroom and you want a certain thought process to go in. So let the children describe the criteria, but describe the criteria at the beginning and pin it down. Say, this is what you had decided, this is what you had said should be with the project should look like at a certain point in time. So make sure that it is looking like that. So this will help them with the direction. You have to make sure that you are giving them multiple opportunities. So, like I said, once a year or twice a year is not going to work. Little bits of formative assessments that you're getting them to do, self assessments that you're getting them to do, have to be frequent. They have to be. I know some teachers feel that it takes too much time and my curriculum or my syllabus will not finish. But if you use these strategies very, very cleverly integrated into your own lesson plan, it doesn't take much time. So you have to ensure that you are giving them enough opportunities to do this. And finally, when we look at self assessment, what are the various ways of doing it? There are two facets to it. So you can do self assessment on the process, and you can do it on the product. So there are two ways how you can structure this. So when we look at the self assessment, this is an important pin up slide for you. We look at assessing the process. So the metacognition that the whole world is talking about, how do we get the children to have a metacognitive strategy in their own mind to be able to assess their process of learning. So that's something that needs to be understood well. And of course, assessing the product of learning. So we are looking at when we are looking at the end product of what the task was set for us, how do we assess that as our own entity, as our own product? How do we evaluate our product as per se? Please understand that when we are looking at any learning process, it is always about the learning, right? It's never about the student. So Arjun has not created a good project is not the right thing to say or to make the children understand. The project has not been made as per the rubric defined is what we are going to talk about. So Arjun is not wrong. The product has not been created according to the criteria which was set perhaps by Arjun to when they started making the project. So it's very important to separate the two. So let not the child feel that I am being victimized here, I am wrong. So you, when you do self assessment and you want to make a positive and a constructive classroom, and you want the children to be non threatened at all that at any point in time, please separate the person from the learning process. So here what we are doing is we are doing self assessment, but we are talking about the learning. So how do we look at the learning, the process of learning, and how do we look at the product of learning? And that is what we are going to talk about and discuss. So when we look at the process, this is about the process. How do we get them to understand what is the process that you need to follow when you are self assessing? So you ask the students to set the goals, explain how they will achieve them, and then then give the students to define what success in learning means. So this is exactly in 3 sentences what they've tried to say, or 2 sentences what they've tried to say is let them define the learning objectives, share it with them, make them understand what the rubrics are and how those fulfillment of those rubrics will actually make it easy for you to understand. So the first bit, of course, is setting the goal for success, setting the goals and sharing it with the children. Then relating the task that you have to do to learning actions. So provide the children with opportunities to relate to the individual course task or the lesson task to the overall intended learning outcomes. So whatever task that you had, strategy that you have thought of to be able to execute that learning, get them to understand what those are and how they are connected to what are you going to achieve at the end of this lesson or course. So in this process, when we talk about the third strategy for metacognition, there should be lots of questions which get the children to understand at a deeper level. So you could have some questions at the beginning which gets them, so do you have the resources, do you have your intent, are your goals in place, do you know what rubrics you're going to follow? So all of that, and it can be at any point of the course or any point of the lesson, and you should get the children to create their own questions as well. So if there are some questions that you have put for them, and if you feel that the children have some questions which gets them to reflect more on the entire process of learning, you can share those questions with the other children as well. So putting in reflective questions will also help them in the metacognition. So here there are some questions which a teacher has on a door, that did I meet the success criteria? Did I understand? Did I try my best? Did I use the resources that the teacher gave me? Did I check my work properly? So these are the kind of prompts that you can have either displayed in your classroom, or if you're using an online class, you can have those there as well as a like we said, an exit or an admit slip. And we are also looking at reflection. So when you talk about student assessment, the most important thing is the reflection. So the last bit you can do is get them to reflect on the assessment that they have done. So post assess assignment reflection. So let them reflect on why did they choose a certain approach. Let them compare and evaluate to another possible approach, and understand the strengths and areas for improvement. So let them look at it and say, okay, I could have done better if I had used so and so, such and such strategy, or I could have done it the way Arjun has done his work. It's something which the planning is shorter and crisper. So they are actually looking at their own work. They are not negating it. They are not saying that I'm wrong. They have tried their best. They have created something that they are proud of, but they can still have a reflection on it to say, what are the strengths of my project? How can I make this better? So these are all instances, the five steps of how you can assess the process of learning. So while we are assessing the process of learning, that is the five step that I was talking about, setting the goals for success, looking at the metacognitive strategies, setting the goals for success, relating tasks to action, taking learning actions, reflective questions, and the post assignment reflection. If we are looking at the product of learning, so your child has already created the product. So, how do we get them to reflect on that? So, you can assess the work that is given to the children. So, here you are starting with the sample work. So, you've given them a task, but you've given them a sample that they need to analyze and critique before they start their own work. So they look at that, they have, see the strengths, and they discuss the weaknesses, and they analyze it according to what the rubric that has been given. They can also do assessing of the product at the end after they have created their own. So they can look at a sample product, they can look at their own product, and they can do a compare and contrast as well. So how was this sample which was shown to us different from the one I've created? It's okay to be different as long as your criteria is met and the learning objectives that you had set for a certain work is also completed. Because we don't want teachers saying that, these are the learning objectives of what NCERT or learning outcomes which our NCERT has set for this chapter. I went on this path and I did student reflection, and the children created something which is an extra project, and I'm not being able to fit it into what the classwork requires me to do. So it has to be something which is in your scheme of things. So let the children create it, let the children analyze it, let them do a compare and contrast, and this will help them understand the entire process. There's also something known as self rating. So let them to understand this. Self rating is something which I will advise you to start from class maybe 8, because the children are a little subjective, and you have to play that card really well. So if you are giving them a scale, or you're getting them to do self rating, have a descriptor for that as well, just as we discussed in the rubrics where we had criteria and we told them what 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 looks like. So it'll be really nice if you can do that descriptors along with the self rating as well, so that it's easier for the children to understand. At this point in time, I will also like to point out, if you have time, and you should take out some time when you're using self-rating to have conversations with the children as to if the child has given himself or herself 3, why is it so? So let them write about it or talk to you about it, but it's very important for them to reflect, to say why are they rating them in this certain way. And this self-testing is something a whole lot of us actually follow in the class, where we do the session and we get them to create questions on their own. So we can create a database of questions, and then you can jumble up these questions and you can get them to assess the entire class using those questions, rather than using your questions which you have created and used over time. So we now understand that when we are looking at assessment, self-assessment, there are two ways of actually triggering this into your classroom. One is looking at the process and getting them to assess the process of learning, and one is to look at the product of learning. So in the process of learning that we spoke about how setting goals was very important, relating to the task was important, having some reflective questions was important, whether they are questions that you have given to the children or the children have generated for themselves. And we are looking at something very important, that is the post assignment reflection. What do they think they have created, and are they happy with it, looking at the learning objectives or the rubrics that you have created. And the second bit we looked at was the product of learning. We spoke about assessing the sample work, doing a compare and contrast, looking at their own work and comparing that. We looked at self rating, but we said self rating is something which should be used with discretion, with discussion, and also getting the children to write why they think they are at a certain rating. And finally, the self testing, where you can generate a database along with the children and do their testing. So, some examples of self assessment. So, a learning journal, here again, this is own self, but it is a very good idea to give them certain prompts that they should be writing about. So this is something that they can keep online. They can have a blog. They can have an internal blog, which is subscribed by only a few people, and only those people can see it. If you don't want the children to actually go out in the public, you can also have Google folders, and those folders can be just accessed by the teacher or the subject teachers who are actually looking at that child's well-being and their education for the n number of years they are in school. But a learning journal is something which can be continuous, which can be used over and over again. A lot of the teachers, and I saw some very interesting ones where the children went on to their parents' Twitter accounts, and they wrote the tweet for the lesson. So the lesson, Twitter has a limited amount of words you can write. So it's actually looking at what I have learned, what did you learn today, what did you find tricky, what will you do next time. So the teachers asking them to write the 3 questions, and then put a hashtag for the lesson. So that became like something they could put the hashtag and they could read each other's responses as well. So this is something you can do very easily. I quite like this grid, which is a very generic grid and can be used for a lot of subject areas for self-reflection. And this is a mixed one actually, which is, like I said, generic, and you can have it in the child's notebook where I understand my learning goals. There are 3 data collection points at this time where the children can say, this is a little like me, it's quite like me, it's very much like me. So you can have your learning objectives spread like this. I took a generic one to just show you, but you can use this even for each lesson that you do, and you can have your learning objectives written in the rectangles around, and you can say, I have understood a little, I have understood quite a bit, and I have understood all of it. So if the children can do a grid like this, it'll help them understand where they need to work more, and it also gives them an idea as to where they are with learning. It gives them the idea. The the underlining point is it's giving them the authority to look at where I am with the objectives. A fantastic strategy for self-reflection is a portfolio, where you get the children to gather the work, the pieces of evidence that they want to showcase and they want to reflect on, and you keep adding them. So in the various schools that I have worked in India and the UK, we had portfolios which moved with the child from one class to the other. So it was very nicely built in the Google Drive, where the IT administrator, using the Google console, would move the folders from, suppose I'm in class 3, would move my folder next year to class 4. So when the child went into the system of the school, he or she found their previous year's data in that as well. So I can see what I was doing last year and how I'm writing my poems or my letters this year, and everything that is for me to see. So that just gives this massive thrust to self reflection, and the children can actually relate to their own learning journey, not only in that particular class, but across the classes. We will speak more about e-portfolio and the portfolio in the next webinar, and the student-led conferences as well. These two areas will be discussed in detail with examples in the next webinar. So I'm not spending too much time on this, but both the strategies are fantastic for student self-reflection. And in the student-led conference, we have the Trinity, we have the parent, the teacher, and the student sitting together. And for that semester, or if you want 6 months, what have I learned, what have I done successfully, what are the targets that I need to set, and more importantly, how will I achieve those targets? So the SLC is something and we will be talking about portfolios and SLCs in the next webinar. So when we talk about self-assessment, what are the things that we need to keep in mind? We need to get the children as stakeholders. We need them to understand that why is this self-assessment being done? How can you get the children as stakeholders to the entire process? So teach them how self-assessment is done. Give them opportunities. We said we have to give them opportunity to work along with us. So how are you making the rubrics? What are the criteria? Make that a very, very powerful process in the classroom, where the children know, okay, I'm going to learn about this, and these are the learning objectives for this lesson. So what do I need to understand? So let them say that in this lesson I should understand what are the planets and what are comets. So what if I've understood this much, this is a 5. If I've understood this much, it's a 4. So they will, since they have created the 5, they know what the epitome of learning for this lesson is going to be. They are going to aim for that. So that's the idea of getting them involved in the criteria, so that they actually understand and they know what is, if I need to excel in this topic, what are the things that I need to do. We spoke about the non-threatening positive classroom culture. Unless and until you have this, the children will not self-reflect. Because if I'm self-reflecting in the classroom and I have something that I need to ask the teacher about, and I have a teacher who's going to rebuke me, who's going to not support me in this process. So my self reflection is, cut short there only. A very important point to note is use self reflection as a formative tool and not at the end, because self reflection, when it is used as a formative assessment, the idea it gives to the student is that I am in control, I can self reflect, I can ask a peer or a teacher, and I can improve my work based on my self assessment. If I analyze my own work correctly, I can make it according to what the criteria or the rubrics asking me to do. So don't use it majorly, use it as a formative tool. When we talk about, self assessments, I said please inbuild some sort of conversations in the process, and SLC is one of the examples wherein you have conversations. The child is speaking, the parent and the teacher give feedback. So it is not the teacher who is cornered to say, what have you got my child to learn. The child takes the responsibility of his own learning. He has self reflected on the entire process of the 3 months or the 6 months of work that has been done, and he has a conversation with the teacher and the parent to say, this is where I am, and I think I should move on, and this is how I'm going to do it. So if the child knows where he or she is with the learning, knows where he needs to go, and he knows how to get there, that is when your self regulation would have been realized. So giving them the opportunity, giving them the confidence that whatever feedback you get, whatever self assessment you do, is we will give you enough time to readjust your work, to look at it again, to incorporate that feedback into the work that you're doing, and then you turn it in. So it's just giving them that kind of a confidence. So I've just summed it up for you here. This is also a good pin board to have in front of you. So you have the clear target. So what are the learning outcomes? What is the learning goal? That is your focus. How do you involve the students in defining the criteria? So what is that we need to, at the end of this learning activity, what are the things that need to be done? So your goals need to be, your targets need to be clear. And what will a good work of this standard look like? So what is the criteria? We also need to have that once the criteria is there and you have checks of learning in between where you're checking their progress, you give them opportunities to self correct, so the children understand that they can look at certain feedback and they can correct their own work. And finally, once the work is done, there should be enough opportunities for them to reflect at their own work. What have they done? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? And how you can also get them to narrate what was their experience while they were in the process. So what happened, what went wrong, what actually, how did you, so their problem solving skills, their critical thinking skills, all of those will come, just pop up because of the way they have tackled a certain situation while doing their work. So when we look at self-assessment, these are the 4 things that you should be looking at and concentrating on. And this should be a good start for starting self-assessment in the classroom. I'm moving on to peer assessment now. For the peer assessment, when we talk about, as the name suggests, it is about looking at your your peers work. Here what you're doing is you are giving them opportunities for both giving and taking feedback, reflecting on their own work while they are looking at some other child's work as well. So when we get the children to do this kind of a reflection, we are actually getting them to understand skills and competencies which are actually the cognitive level. At the cognitive level, what are they learning, what is the topic, what are they doing at that point in time? Metacognitive, because they're looking at their own work, how to improve their own work, what is that they have done, what is their peers work, So you are looking at the entire learning process metacognitively. We are also looking at the social and the affective part of the entire process in the classroom. How do you work together? So here, at when I talk about peer assessment, I will stress again the need of constructive feedback, and we will be talking about that in some time. So when we do peer assessment, just like we have created a non-threatening classroom for self-reflection, for the children to speak out and say what they actually think about their work. The same goes for peer assessment as well, because here, before you talk to a teacher who is an adult in the classroom, you are actually dealing with a peer. So there you need the children to understand the value of taking and receiving feedback. So this is something that is very, very important to keep in mind when you start peer assessment in the classroom. Please make sure your class is ready to actually accept that. So what are the various things that can be done for peer assessment? So when we look at the cognitive level, the problem solving, critical thinking, analyzing data, oral and written expression, these are the kind of things that you can use your peer assessment in. Metacognition, of course, is self reflection and self evaluation. So once you've done that, you have your peer look at that, and you collectively talk about it and look at the multiple perspectives. The social aspect and the affective aspect of the peer assessment is, of course, the effective communication, giving feedback, leading a discussion, working in a group, all of that. And your motivation to actually do the work, your responsibility, the kind of that I am responsible for my own learning, and the flexibility in this entire process, where you are not doing a question answer and just copying this answer from the board where the teacher has written the correct answer and you write it in your notebook. It's not about uh, that kind of learning. This is about learning from each other. And you might say that children might get it wrong. There might be instances where they have not written the right thing, but there are various ways to correct that as well. So how do you do it? When you talk about peer assessment, there are uh, 3 or 4 steps that you will do with the children on an individual one-to-one basis, like in a classroom. And then once you have given some form of formative assessment and the children have actually done a good work and you have given them feedback on that, and they have corrected their work, then is when you can look at doing peer evaluation as well. The children should have certain level of proficiency before they can actually give feedback on a certain concept. Now these kind of things are something which I don't have to tell you. You are all educators. You will not walk into a classroom and say, okay, write an essay, now you please exchange your essays and now you please mark them according to a rubric which is given. It doesn't work like that. You have to have the children at a certain point in time. So I'm sure you will all be judicious in your decision as to where it needs to come in. So we have to work in a certain way, and that way is when you get the children to a certain point of proficiency is when you will get them to do the peer feedback. Now, how can we use peer feedback and what are the various methods? So your think, pair, share, your iClickers, your peer review, reviewing the work, think aloud, pair, share, problem solving is something which can be used at periodic intervals. Here we are not looking at a particular thing which is already developed. Here we are developing it, hence the name formative. And I will show you the explanation of this in a bit. And we are looking at the summative peer feedback here, the participation of the children, the group work, contribution, doing it together, and the peer nomination. And I will discuss this at length in just a minute. So when we are talking about the think, pair, share activity, please look at this carefully. This is a formative peer feedback. Here, the students are asked to reflect and work out on a question. They have to reflect on a on a prompt. Here, then the children work in pairs and compare and discuss their individual responses. The objective of this step is to discuss the steps they took in arriving to the response and to debate. So why are you thinking this? What did the teacher say, and why have you chosen this response? So finally, what they do is that the students actually discuss the solution as a class, and if there are, right, wrong answers, they are revealed as a result of the discussion. And if it is an open-ended thing, the children are exposed to a wide range of perspectives. See how the build up is being done. So the children are given free way to actually discuss what they want to discuss, and then there is a whole class discussion where the teacher can give them feedback. Now eye clickers or clickers is something which are multiple choice questions, and the children can use this hardware or the software like your Kahoot. You have a student response system which you can, clickers are actually that, and then your kaun banega karodpati kind of a situation where there are multiple choices and the children are actually giving a response, or they are just raising their hands, and those responses are tallied and they are presented as a class. Now the students are then asked to pair up and or form a small group, and they actually give the answers after discussing with each other, and they have to also understand and describe why they chose that particular solution. So here the instructor or the teacher asks the children to answer the same multiple choice question, allowing them to change their, please listen and understand how children are, it's just not like going rat-a-tat-a-tat on the clicker board and answering the questions. You are getting the children to pair up, you're getting them to look at answers, you're looking them to change their answers, but they need to discuss this together as a team, and then they need to present. And then eventually the teacher discusses the correct answer and spends additional time on the material if the children select the incorrect answer. So you are giving them explanation. So the flow is open-ended. First the children are allowed to give, and then the peer gives it, and then finally the teacher validates it to say this is what is the correct answer. So this is your clickers. Peer review, of course, peer review is something which is, like I said, at a certain point in time where they have mastery about a certain process. So the children work on their drafts. The peer looks at the draft, and then this can have various iterations. I've just made one here. So the children are working at a draft, they're giving it to the peer, and perhaps getting their own checking as well from another peer. And then finally you make the final product, and then eventually it is checked by after you have graded against a rubric, it is checked by the teacher. So the final feedback is given by the teacher, but there is an element of peer feedback involved here. There's also another option where the child creates an outline, the peer reviews the outline, the student drafts the work based on the peer reviewed outline, then the peer reviews the draft which is given, and then you make the final product, and after doing that you can again show it to the peer, and then finally the teacher checks it. So that's how you can work on peer review for your single review or multiple reviews which can be given by the peers. Now think aloud pair solving, problem solving. This is again peer feedback, where the children are given a complex set of problems. The students take turn to solve the problem, describing it step by step. The other student observes the problem solving and provides insights, so that two of them working together. They ask questions about what is wrong, what is unclear, what are the various suggestions that you can give, and then the students switch, and they based on the first person's description, they give their own solution to it, and finally the two of them finalize whatever that they want to write as a response, and this can keep on going for different problems. So they just keeps switching roles for that. Participation, of course, this is a summative kind of a feedback, peer feedback, wherein the discussion that is happening in the classroom can be taken as the the final process that happens in the learning. So the children are doing discussions, and at the end they are asked to assess each other and what is the contribution to the learning of others. So here you can have your rating, or you can have your rubric, and the criteria can be coherence, commitment, creativity, courtesy. How did the child who was actually presenting this discussion, how did they rate according to that? So here also you can look at the different criteria set on the rubric, and the children can be giving their uh, presentation, and the others grading them according to that. So group work contribution, here again, this is summative. So you have the teacher, will understand and try and see, how much each member has contributed. Now, here, a lot of the teachers say, some children are doing their work, some are not doing their work. So how can they be assessed? So here we are talking about each child, and I think we spoke about this example in the previous webinar as well, where we said that yes, there will be a group evaluation, and then each group member will evaluate the other group member. And this is a rubric which I had shown you as well, wherein after we evaluate our group work, and we list that up, we also evaluate each other. The other summative peer assessment that you can do is each member of the group will nominate one person who has ranked the highest in some area, the rubric that we were talking about before. And this student has done exceptionally well, and this is something which the teacher can actually get the person to mentor. So group learning, when we are doing the various aspects. So, for instance, one child was very good at knowledge, or very good at presenting. Like we had these various things where we spoke about how the children have done in various aspects. So coherence, commitment, creativity. So if you have given a very high scale, almost everybody has given a very high scale for creativity, that person can be nominated for creativity in itself. Now here, this is again a Socrative discussion, brilliantly done, and I have done this with adults as well, wherein what you do is you sit in two circles, one inside and one outside, and you do the discussions according to what is being discussed at that point in time. There is no interruption. They respect each other. Even if you disagree, you have to just look at or hear what the people are doing. And after you've done that discussion, the people in the center move out to the outer circle, and they become the fishbowl, and the people who are sitting outside will listen to it. So this works very well for any topic that you want to do, and you can listen to many perspectives. And if the teacher has created a criteria or a rubric along with the children, this gets you, or making a note-taking paper or a sheet for the children to understand the process. This works very well for the whole class. You can have the whole class split into two, one in the inner circle and one in the outer circle. The inner circle discusses first, and the outer circle takes notes, and then the outer circle goes in and discusses the same topic or another topic related to that. So you can do that. This one here is called the feedback bun, which has the top. So you will look at your peer, and you will give one positive aspect of the work. The filling will be, the section where the work could be improved, and the bottom has to be a positive aspect of the work. So the feedback bun. You can look at the thinking hats. You can look at the peer work that is in front of you, and you can have white, green, yellow, red, and blue or black. And if you color code red, that means those are the facts that you're looking at. The green is creativity. Yellow are the positives of that piece that you are giving feedback on. Red is your reaction to the process, your topic that has been given. The blue is the process behind the product. How did you actually arrive at creating what you have created? And black are the concerns. So you can leave a colorful feedback for your peer. And these thinking hats are something which everybody knows about, the De Bono hats, and the children can be introduced to them as well. So when I spoke about how do we integrate peer assessment or self-assessment, I said the routines and the strategies should be known to the children. So whichever routine or strategy that you're trying to use, if you say start in class 6, and then they use the same in class 7, they use the same in class 8, and if you are working as a staff together coherently, you will see that whether it is maths or science or English, and you're using the same peer assessment over and over again, the 10 peer assessment strategies that you're using, the children will not even need the instructions in about 2 or 3 months' time. You just have to say, this is the peer assessment that we need to do, and we are doing thinking hats today, and the children will know what to do. So if you make it, like I said, the culture in the school, the children are more attuned to the process, and it will be easier for you to transmit this. You can also use the weather gauge, wherein the warm things will give you positive feedback in relation to a success criteria. So what is the rubric that you've been given? Cold would be areas of improvement. So whatever you want to call it, whatever peer assessment strategy you want to use, these are the the nomenclature should be known to the children. Today we're going to do the weather gauge. Look at this piece of paper, give me some warm and cold. So here uh, we can get the children to understand what is that you're trying to do, and here provide advice for raising the temperature. So how will you, what suggestions will you give, what hints will you give to this child to make him make him raise the temperature chart? So what are the pluses, what are according to the rubric, what are the things that meet the criteria, what are the minuses, what is the criteria which is not evident, and what is interesting, that is something that you need to improve on, what is that that you would like to give your feedback on. This one is also interesting, which is called the ladder of feedback. I'm sorry. In the first step, you will read, or if you are doing a peer assessment of a listening activity, you will listen and you will ask questions, clarifying questions. In the second step, you will identify the strengths of the piece, whether it is an audio or you're listening to a person or you're reading something. In the third step, you will identify the areas of improvement. But here you see the ladder of feedback doesn't leave it there, that these are the areas of improvement. You have to suggest ways to improve. So this is the metacognition, that what are the areas that even I might have some areas to improve, and I also might have missed that in my piece. So what are the ways that I can improve this work? So it doesn't just leave it at the areas of discussion. It tells us that you have to give a suggest way to improve that as well. So finally, we are looking at peer discussion and conferencing. When we look at peer-to-peer conferences, or we look at paired discussions, here you are able to do a more effective task. So I would suggest that in your classroom, once you are sorted with self-reflection, because self-reflection is a very, very powerful tool, and it gets the children to empathize that, I have done self-reflection for my work and I have been critical to this point, so my peer would have done it as well. Once you have that sorted, once you get the children to self-reflect, start with peer-to-peer assessment, rather than having too many people in the group, having a face to the work that you are assessing is a very, very important technique when you are trying to create this culture of confidence and self-regulation in the classroom. So give it, that's the reason I have it here as a peer-to-peer discussion or a conference wherein you're doing a one-to-one sort of a feedback, just like a teacher would do with a student. So let them gain confidence, and then you can do various strategies that I have spoken to you about. When you look at self and peer assessment, uh, how do you prepare the students? Now, this is something we are self is something which is very, very complex and cognitive, and peer is something which is a social skill, right? And it, as I said before as well, this will develop over time. So don't think that I'll do two strategies in my classroom and I'm done. So you have to work on it, you have to build on it, and it's very important for you to give them the instructions. Okay, we are doing the the this strategy in the class, and you need them to understand that this is what the strategy does. This is what will be the outcome of this process that we are doing. You can't have two children sitting together and say, okay, now I want you to look at each other's work, or you speak and you listen and you speak and the other one listens. It has to be a very structured sort of a approach, which you start small at the beginning. You get them to have full instructions as to what needs to be done, what needs to be followed through, what is that you are really going to be laying stress on, what are the things that you need to do, because the children would have spent 15 minutes and they will not arrive at what you had wanted them to do. So it is very clear that from the very beginning you have to understand that they understand how much of information that needs to be extracted so that their task is done. So preparing them for self and peer assessment is a very important thing as well. So how do you actually do it? So how do you get the children to understand? So how do they give constructive feedback? How do they receive feedback? Now this is a more important thing. Giving feedback is something all of us do, right? We give our feedback very, very casually and quickly, because giving feedback is the easiest thing that you can do. But imagine that your student is sitting in front of you and saying, Miss, I want to give some feedback to you as well on how the learning experience for me has been. How many of us have tried that? I don't think we take that liberty of saying, or we don't have that kind of time that we are doing that very comfortably and frequently. But I would suggest try it, because you will then be able to empathize with what children are going to feel in this process. How do you take feedback? How do you react to it if somebody tells you something about your teaching? Most of us don't want anybody to come into our classroom when we are teaching. There's a major uproar when we go into classrooms to say that we are going to be looking at your lessons today. So how do you give and how do you receive feedback? That should be something which should be clear to them. How do you generate the assessment criteria? How is your rubric being formed? What is the evaluation? What is the checklist that we are looking at? What are the standards we are setting? All of this should be very clear to them. So you can also once you are building this culture, you can also have some practice sessions where you give them the rationale of using self or peer assessment. Why are we doing it? Coach the children, do some role play, show them some rubrics and say, okay, if you do this kind of a thing, this is how the rubric will flow. And if they see the performance, the role play, and if they have certain questions, let them get answers to the questions. So let them practice. And I'm telling you, if you look at 10 strategies of self and peer assessment and you ingrain them in children, and I have done it in class 1 as well. We do in our curriculum, in our create curriculum, we do self assessment right from foundation. A 2.5-year-old does self reflection. So we have inbuilt it in our curriculum, where the children look at self-assessment for every work that they are doing on a daily basis. So if you start them like that, as they grow older, they take that in their stride as an inbuilt sort of a skill that they have, wherein when they're doing their work, they're looking at the way it is flowing, and they're looking at it, analyzing their work before it is actually given in. So when we look at preparing the children, please see that we with the process that we are doing, it will need some in class time, but that will be worthwhile, because the children will be able to, they will be confident of actually doing that entire thing themselves. And what you are building in them to be able to analyze their own work is something that you are preparing them for life. This way of looking at my own work and using metacognition about how am I going to do this, where do I need to go, and how do I need to go, is something you are helping them for life. It is not just about class 3 or class 4. So this is very important. And how do we actually get them to do it is by running these practice sessions in the classroom. Use that time, invest that in class time, and you will actually see that you are rewarded, because the teachers in the other classes will also thank you, in the other subject areas will also thank you, because these self and peer assessment strategies are generic. They can be used across the subjects in a certain class. So build up your repertoire and stress on it. Engage with the children, and slowly and gradually they will be able to do it. The most important aspect of self and peer assessment, I feel, is providing feedback, receiving and providing feedback. So we will look at this a little more deeply, that when we are giving the feedback to the children, or the children are giving feedback to each other, we what are we looking at? So first of all, I have read somebody's work, and this person has read my work, or somebody else has read my work. I am not only looking at this person's work, I'm actually getting into the shoes of that person. What is that person actually thinking about? What was in his mind or her mind when she actually wrote this piece that I'm looking at, whether it's a science numerical, or a maths problem, or an English essay, poem, or whatever. So when I'm looking at this artifact, what are the the reflections? What is this child actually feeling? So getting multiple perspectives of the same work, because it's the same task, the same thing done by another person. So how is it different from what I wrote? How is that perspective different? What are the various things that this person has thought of and I didn't think? And as a result of that, this person is not only looking at this peer's work, the person is also reflecting on their own work. So constructive feedback is very, very important, and very I think crucial for you to do peer assessment, because here you are interacting with another entity, with another student, or a pair of students, or a group of students. So there are various elements that you need to keep in mind when you're looking at constructive feedback. So the first one is that it needs to be timely. Like all feedbacks, constructive feedback also need to be timely. It need to be specific. So it needs to be about that point in time, about that artifact that we are looking at. So what is the feedback for that particular piece or artifact that I have in my hand? It needs to be objective. So it has to be, so you've also read the same chapter, or the same concept, or the equation, or the sum that you're doing. You've also done the same thing, right? So don't get influenced by what others are saying, or somebody has spoken a sentence to say this is right, this is wrong. Have your own sort of a perspective to it. make it constructive. This is something which is very important. You don't even have to think twice about it. Children should be on an autopilot for this, that when you are giving a feedback, positively or whatever you are talking about, make sure you have a solution to it. So you are saying, okay, this is not written correctly, so that's one way of putting it. Or you can say this can be written like this. So make sure that the children know that your constructive feedback needs to have a solution. And of course, what you're doing in this process is you are giving the student uh, agency. So your student choice and your student voice, both of them are provided to the children in this entire process. So starting from being timely, specific, objective, and constructive. Constructive also includes giving a solution, offering a solution. You are in the path of giving constructive, the power of constructive feedback. You are giving student agency to your learners, who actually become more responsible, creative, and I would say majorly they feel that they have a stake in their own learning. So a very important and a pertinent sort of a thing. So when you talk about creating the culture in the classroom, we spoke about constructive feedback and how can we create that culture. So these are certain rules that you should discuss with your students, that you have to trust your peers with respect. You have to balance the feedback with some compliments. So if there are some things which are wrong, look for things which are beautifully written as well. So make it a balanced sort of a feedback. Give specific examples of what works well and what can be improved. So like I said, good things and bad things both. But once you have looked at what can be improved, please give the solution as well. And like we said, right, some 4-5 slides back, that the constructive feedback that you're giving is not about Arjun. It's about the work that Arjun has done. So it's not personal, it's about the piece which is lying in front of you. So what does an effective student feedback look like? So when we are looking at the various learning phenomena around us, we know that effective feedback that the children get is the most powerful influence on how children or people can learn. This is something which is if taken openly and positively, feedback can actually improve your life to the core. So when we are giving feedback, please make sure that it is goal reference. We have spoken about it. It is tangible and it's transparent. It is actionable. It is user friendly. That means it is specific and it's personalized. It's timely. It's ongoing and it's consistent. Here again, I want to give you research as to why feedback is important and why we need to work on constructive feedback. A whole lot of you also must have heard of John Hattie, who is somebody who has worked majorly on visible learning strategies. And this is, something that has come out of that research. So when we are looking at effective feedback, it should be effective, it should be clear, it should be relevant, it should look at the prior level of understanding. It should also look at the what kind of an emotional reaction. I really like this word, this phrase in this sentence, where when you are writing a feedback, please be conscious of the fact as to what emotional reaction will the child have to this. So how can you make it constructive? So don't let go of that. If there is something which needs to be improved on, write it. It needs to be written, but critically, to do your critical thinking and write a sentence in which conveys the work that the child needs to do to make this better, but at the same time doesn't hurt that person's feelings. So this is something we need to teach our children, to be clever about giving feedback, being not being judgmental, looking at the learning process, and look at how we can make this a beautiful process where we all learn together and the children learn from each other. So when we talk about effective feedback, there are three questions that we should be, or the children should be looking at. So, what are the goals? What progress is being made toward the goals, and what activities need to be taken to make it a better progress? How do we do that? So, the children also need to understand that. So, when we are giving feedback, are we, looking at the goals? Has this person who's written this piece was this person able to move towards the goals, and what are the various activities, the various strategies, the various processes that were made to undertake this progress. So very important for them to understand the entire process as well. So you see, slowly and gradually, we in the first webinar we spoke about planning, and slowly till this slide we are getting the children also into the planning process. When we are looking at peer evaluation, we are looking at constructive feedback, we are actually making them our own stakeholders. We are making them partners of their own learning process, and that's the way it should be, slowly and gradually. So the feedback works at 4 levels. So we are looking at the task and the product feedback, we are looking at the process feedback, we are looking at the conditional level, that is, how are they improving their ability to monitor their own learning, and we are looking at the self level. You will see that the self level is something which you have the children understand, because when you look at the younger children, they are very, and this I'm talking from experience, they're very critical. They're very critical of the work, that I've not done a good drawing, or I've not written this well, my writing is not looking nice on this, and I want to improve. So it is how the children consciously, with social pressures, peer pressure, as they move up in their age, and in their class, they become more, they have a tendency of praising their own work, on I don't care attitude, comes in. So when you are looking at self reflection, you have to be very careful about this aspect, that the self reflection and the peer reflection has to be very, very well quantified. We are now looking at one bit that I want to talk about, looking and marking work, because when we do assessment, we have to, most of us look at, how are we marking the work that has finally and eventually come to us, because most of us look at tangible work in the notebook, and how is that being in the entire process. So we are looking at how do we improve, or what does effective marking look like. So when you look at this phenomena of marking the work, we should be looking at, while I'm marking, what have the children understood and what have they not understood. So that is something, because what we are doing is we are planning our next move, right? We are planning our next move towards what are we going to do. You'll have to excuse me for a minute. I'm so sorry. I'm at a place where the bugle is sounded in the evening. So that was the sound of the bugle. Give me a minute. I'm coming back. I just have 2 slides left, and we are looking at a very, very important part of our peer assessment, student assessment, constructive feedback. That is about marking work, because when we look at marking the work, we do not look at the assessment bit of it, in a sense that the children will be reading. We just give ticks, and we cross things out, and we look at giving good, fair, excellent, and things like that. So I thought, while we are talking about peer assessment and self assessment, so the child who actually looks at self assessment in a very, very methodical way, and you've taught them how to do self and peer assessment, you will understand that the children will look at their work which you have marked for them. So they will look for what are the areas that the teacher is marking us on. So you need to understand, and you need to mark what the children have understood and what they have not understood. You have to look at what are the things that you will need to revisit or recap when you are doing the lesson with them the next time. What are the various successes? What are the positive things that have happened? So try and encourage that, try and motivate that. This will inform your planning. So if the child have misunderstood something, and you will see, and this is intuitive, when the teacher is marking the work, you will see that there is a certain aspect in the entire phenomena where the children are making that same mistake, and that will inform your planning to say, tomorrow when you come into the classroom, this is something that you have to actually tackle when you start. You are also, when you are marking this work, you are also promoting what a good standard of, or a high standard of work should be. So what does a good answer look like? So make sure that you give the pertinent feedback there. When there are errors, or there are misunderstandings, make sure that you take this opportunity to solve it as soon as possible, so that the children make the most of it. They have understood what the correction is, and there is a page after that where you say, okay, can you please rewrite this, or can you research this, so that the misunderstanding that the child has is removed almost as soon as possible. Look at the effort, the presentation that the child has made for you, or has made in the notebook, written in the notebook. And please avoid writing fair, poor, and excellent. When you're giving a feedback, put focused comments onto what you want the child to do, what are your expectations. In the entire presentation today, we are talking about how the child can be part of this learning process, and the children can give feedback. They should give positive, they should think about what they're writing, they should incorporate improvements. They should not just write be done. Once you are teaching them, so if you are able to check their work and give the modeling of that correct kind of work. So when you get the children to look at certain work, let them reflect. So self reflection that we were talking about, let them set targets. So the metacognition comes in. How am I going to move from here? What am I going to do next? And that will help them move from in that aspect of learning to wherever further you want them to go. And finally, I think this is something which you would want from your principal, or from your HOD as well. If you've done some kind of work, whether it is not according to the standard that you want, but you've given feedback on that, and the child has worked on it and integrated the constructive feedback that you have done, please make sure that you do the shabash to this child and say, well done, this is something that I was expecting, and I want you to go move forward with these 3 points as well. So value their efforts just as you would like your work to be valued. So for the marking work, please ensure that the feedback focuses on what is the goal, what was the goal, and are we actually making progress? What needs to be undertaken to make that progress, and try not to mark errors without giving suggestions. So if you remember, this is what we are asking the children to do. We are asking the children, when they give constructive feedback, this is what they need. These are the 4 rules that you need to look at. So when you are marking work, you are modeling this constructive feedback for them and by them. So you have to make sure that you are giving them the correct feedback, so that that feedback is something which becomes a landmark model for them. And when they give feedback to their peers, it actually looks at that. So with that, we come to the end of webinar 3. We will be looking at now reflection as an assessment tool. We have looked at peer reflection. We've looked at self-reflection as a metacognitive tool. We have looked at constructive feedback. In webinar 4, we will be looking primarily as self-reflection as an assessment tool. The learning objectives, of course, for that will be, like I told you, we will be looking at e-portfolios, or if you don't want to go electronic, the same thing can be made physically as well. We will be looking at SLCs, how the student-led conferences give student agency to the children and gets them to reflect on their own learning, what we spoke about today. We will explore the different strategies for the students to reflect on their learning, and eventually we will get you to comprehend how to motivate students to reflect on their learning, and we will move towards metacognition, which is something that NEP talks very solidly about. So that's a wrap for today, and I hope this was beneficial, and I hope I'm trying to get coherence to the flow of the 4 webinars that we are going to do with you, and the final one will be on November 1st. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deepti ma'am. And I think today's topic was the most, complex one, where self-assessment is not an easy aspect to deal with. So thank you so much for your presentation, and we look forward to to the next session. And thank you, Puchika ma'am. Thanks all the participants for attending this webinar, and we hope that this helped you a lot in devising strategies in your classrooms for self-assessment. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye.